We have seen warnings from China in the past, but this is something else altogether.
Yeah, it's certainly not a positive turn, is it, Laura? On the particular quote you said before, though, one thing I would just quickly add is it's actually a paraphrase of something Australia's former Foreign Minister Alexander Downer said back in 2012. He said, if you imagine China will become the enemy, then sure enough, it will become the enemy. So I don't know if I'd get too excited just by that quote.
No, but this was, it seems, deliberately leaked, and it was to coincide with Scott Morrison's trip to Japan. Is that your reading of it?
Yeah, it's responding to those developments. Laura, the thing is, things are coming so thick and fast in Australia-China relations at the moment that both sides can point to provocative activities by the other. I remember a few months ago we had Deputy Head of Mission of the Chinese Mission in Australia, Wang Xining, give what he thought was a conciliatory speech at the National Press Club in Canberra, and the next day the Morrison government moved forward with its plans to introduce the Foreign Relations Act that could tear up the Victorian government's agreement with China on the Belt and Road. So my point is not to point fingers here, it's just to say that these developments are coming thick and fast on both sides.
Yeah, the relationship really isn't on the strongest of terms at the moment, you might say, James. But who's hurting the most, Australia or China?
Oh, look, I think when it comes to trade actions, I think China is hurting itself more than anyone. Chinese consumers, of course, are still very clear. They want Australian wine, they want Chinese brewers want Australian barley and so on. So by the Chinese government blocking that trade, they're only hurting themselves. And moreover, I think China's doing some pretty enormous damage to its international reputation here. I mean, it's not just Australia that's watching this, it's the whole world. And, you know, it's all right for China to say that it's a country that plays by the rules, but when it plainly engages in these sorts of trade acts, using trade as a tool of as a tool of punishment, it certainly doesn't play well for them on the world stage.
No, it's not, but tell that to exporters of Australian beef, barley, seafood, timber, the list goes on. It seems that as the weeks go by, China finds another industry to slap sanctions on. Can we expect more of this?
Yeah, I don't see it dying down, Laura. Here's the fundamental problem as I see it. But in the early 1990s, Australia and China were in a bad way. But in 1996, then Prime Minister John Howard got together with then Chinese President Jiang Zemin, and they agreed to new terms of the bilateral relationship. What Howard said, he told Jiang, was that we wouldn't walk away from our security alliance with the United States, but nothing we did in that alliance would be directed at China. And I think fundamentally that's the problem we have now. Scott Morrison and President Xi Jinping haven't been able to update that understanding. And at least in China's mind, I don't think this is correct, by the way, but in their mind, they see Australia working with the United States to attack China. So I think that's the fundamental challenge we really need to address.
Yeah, there are a few fundamental challenges, but, you know, Australia needs to protect its own sovereignty as well and not be seen to nor bend to the whims and demands of China. It's a difficult one to navigate. How is the government doing in your view?
Look, I think overall, I think the government is doing a good job. You're right. You certainly don't want to be, buckling in the face of Chinese trade pressure, because all that will do is encourage China to use more trade pressure. I'd just add, Laura, though, there are a couple decisions that Canberra is making that are pretty bizarre, and I don't think they help. For example, we had the decision a couple of months ago to block a Japanese owner of Australian dairy and drink assets from selling those assets to a Chinese buyer. Now, that's plainly got nothing to do with national security. So I'm just thinking, if you were sitting in the Chinese embassy in Canberra, it'd be pretty hard to read those sorts of developments as anything other than quite provocative.
I guess, James, people will be thinking is, what is the point of having a free trade agreement, such as the one that was lauded, that was signed just a couple of years ago, when China doesn't seem to be playing by the rules?
Yeah, and I understand the sentiment, but let's not lose sight of the bigger picture as well, Laura, and that is that despite all these political tensions, and I'm not trying to downplay the hits that barley and beef and so on are taking at the moment, but last year two-way trade with China hit a record high. So the free trade agreement has been delivering. And this year, in the first 9 months, total exports to China are only down by 2.3%. They're down by more than 11% to the rest of the world. So this is what we need to do. I mean, we need to recognise the seriousness of the developments, but not panic and throw the baby out with the bathwater.